7 executives failed until the coffee girl said one sentence that saved the billionaire $200 million. And what he did surprised everyone. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, what city are you watching from? And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. This is completely absurd. Nathaniel Maxwell's voice cut through the boardroom like ice. The 35-year-old CEO slammed his fist against the mahogany table in frustration. 3 weeks. 3 weeks with the so-called brightest minds in the corporate world, and we're in the exact same place. Around the massive table, 7 executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Dark circles marked faces that cost a fortune in skin treatments. Italian suits wrinkled from days without leaving the office. Sleepless nights and sacrificed weekends, all for nothing. $200 million. That was what was at stake. Richard Stern, the gray-haired CFO, adjusted his designer glasses and dared to speak up. Nathaniel, we are exploring every legal option available. This kind of international tax issue has no easy fix. No easy fix? Or are you all just not competent enough to find one? Nathaniel fired back, his glare burning through everyone in the room. I pay each of you 7-figure salaries to handle problems exactly like this. Jennifer Kowalski, head of international relations, tried to keep things calm. If we renegotiate with the German Ministry of Finance, maybe. The deadline expired 48 hours ago, Richard interrupted. How many times are we going to have the same discussion? We're stuck with the current terms. Period. Thomas Berkeley, VP of International Operations, cleared his throat nervously. We could restructure using offshore subsidiaries in the Cayman Islands. That might help us work around the problematic clause. And expose us to legal risks that would cost more in lawsuits than we'd ever save from the merger. Richard practically shouted, completely losing his temper. Do you all really have Harvard MBAs? Or did you buy your diplomas online? The boardroom felt like a war zone after weeks of battle. Crumpled papers piled up on the edges of the table. The whiteboard was full of numbers, formulas, and charts that stubbornly refused to make sense. Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, irritated. He had inherited Maxwell Industries at 28, turning his father's company into a world-respected tech empire. 7 years of building, innovating, achieving. And now he was stuck, trapped by one tax clause that 7 extremely expensive people couldn't solve. The merger with Tech Europa was supposed to be the crowning achievement. A German software giant that, combined with Maxwell Industries, would reshape the global market. Shareholders were eager, the media was buzzing, competitors were anxious. But one cursed clause buried in a trade agreement between the US and the European Union had frozen everything. The penalty for breaking the terms? $200 million gone, before the merger even turned a profit. Does anyone here have a real solution? Nathaniel asked. His voice was low, but it carried enough weight to shut down all discussion instantly. Or are we just going to keep going in circles until time runs out? Because honestly, if that's the case, I'll fire every single one of you and settle it with a coin toss. At least that would be faster. Total silence. 7 highly paid executives avoided the CEO's eyes. David Cheng, director of mergers and acquisitions, spoke up quietly. We could bring in outside consultants. McKinsey has experts in international tax law who might? Nathaniel repeated, the word dripping with disdain. I don't pay you for might, David. It was exactly at that moment, tension at its peak, that the door opened. Kate Scott walked in pushing a cart, the sound of the wheels on the marble floor slicing through the awkward silence. She wore the plain navy blue uniform of the corporate cafe. Invisible, just like always. Excuse me, she murmured, eyes down, as she began collecting the dirty coffee cups scattered across the table. No one looked at her. No one ever did. To them, Kate was just part of the furniture. Like the air conditioner or the leather chairs. The coffee girl. $11 an hour to serve drinks and stay invisible. 5 months of the same routine. Entering that room 5-6 times a day, always ignored, always overlooked. But Kate saw everything. And she understood far more than anyone in that room could imagine. As she picked up a cup near the whiteboard, her eyes, sharpened by 4 intense years of studying economics, caught the scribbled numbers, the complex formulas, the projected cash flow charts going in every direction. And then she saw it. The The mistake was so obvious, so basic, that Kate had to bite her lip to keep from laughing out loud. They were using the wrong tax treaty. Applying regulations from 2015, when a crucial 2019 amendment, specifically Article 47B, created a perfect exception for exactly that type of merger. It was basic international trade material. First semester. Any average student would know. Kate served coffee quietly, her mind racing. Should she say something? It wasn't her problem. She wasn't paid to save billion-dollar companies. She was paid to serve coffee and stay quiet. Besides, those people had treated her like she was invisible for months. Why help them? The answer came when David Cheng absent-mindedly held out his cup without even looking at her. Kate poured the coffee with the precision of someone who had done that motion 1,000 times. He took the cup back and, with one careless move, spilled half the hot liquid directly on her uniform. The burning coffee soaked right through the thin fabric. "Watch it," David muttered, his eyes still fixed on his laptop screen. No apology. No acknowledgement. Kate felt her cheeks burn with anger, felt the shame rise in her neck like boiling lava, felt 5 months of being unseen, casually dismissed, treated like nothing by people who earned in 1 week what she made in a year. She had a college degree, academic honors, graduated at the top of her class in economics from Washington State University. And there she was, covered in coffee, humiliated, invisible, while 7 overpriced MBAs couldn't solve a problem she could fix in her sleep. Something inside Kate Scott snapped. She grabbed a napkin from the tray, wiped the stain on her uniform, and then, without planning, without a filter, said in a sharp, sarcastic tone she didn't even try to hide, "Have you tried applying Article 47B from the 2019 tax treaty? It solves the issue in 30 seconds. The silence that fell over the room was deafening. 7 heads turned at the same time, like a slow-motion scene. 7 wide-eyed faces stared at her like she had just spoken an alien language. Nathaniel, who had been about to take another sip of water, froze with the glass in midair. He turned toward her, his intense blue eyes locking on hers with a force Kate had never felt before. He took 3 slow steps in her direction. "What did you say?" Nathaniel's voice was low, controlled, but something new was in it. Genuine interest, raw surprise, maybe even hope. Kate swallowed hard, the weight of 7 stunned stares making her heart race. It was too late to back down. She lifted her chin, met Nathaniel Maxwell's sharp gaze, and repeated, this time with a confidence that surprised even herself. Article 47B of the 2019 International Trade Tax Treaty. It created a specific exemption for tech mergers between American and European companies that meet 3 required criteria: proven and documented innovation, retention of at least 80% of the original workforce, and keeping the headquarters on U.S. soil. Kate paused on purpose, letting each word sink into the supposedly brilliant minds around her. Maxwell Industries meets all 3. The tax penalty you're trying to get around doesn't even apply. You've been using the 2015 treaty as your reference. You've been looking at the completely wrong numbers for 3 full weeks. Richard Stern was the first to speak again, and his voice came out with a poisonous layer of condescension. And where exactly does a simple coffee girl get that kind of technical information? From some business podcast you listen to while cleaning tables? But Nathaniel already had his laptop open, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Jennifer pulled out her tablet. Thomas unlocked his phone in a hurry. David opened multiple windows on his computer. One by one, they all started checking, searching, confirming. The silence in the room shifted, from frozen shock to intense concentration. "My God," Jennifer whispered, the tablet screen lighting up her pale face. "She's right. The article exists. The 2019 amendment. The exception for tech mergers. We meet literally every requirement." "Impossible," Richard shook his head firmly, but his hands were clearly trembling as he checked his own computer. The color slowly drained from his face, replaced by a pale, almost ghostly white. Thomas looked at David in disbelief. David looked at Jennifer, stunned. Jennifer turned to Nathaniel, waiting for confirmation. Nathaniel slowly raised his eyes from the laptop screen, his expression a mix of relief, disbelief, and something very close to admiration. "She's completely right," he confirmed, his voice low, almost reverent. "Article 47B is real. It was implemented in April 2019. and we meet every single requirement perfectly." He looked up, and for the first time in 5 months of Kate working on that floor, Nathaniel Maxwell truly saw her. He didn't look through her like she was air. He didn't look past her like she was part of the furniture. He saw her. As a person, as a human being, as someone who had just saved $200 million. Kate stood by the coffee cart, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Part of her still couldn't believe what she had just done. The other part felt a fierce, almost primal satisfaction at seeing those shocked faces. "How do you know this?" Nathaniel asked, taking 2 more steps toward her, closing the distance. He didn't sound angry. He sounded genuinely curious. Before Kate could even form an answer, the digital wall clock gave a soft beep. 6 o'clock. End of her shift. She had exactly 45 minutes to catch the bus, get across town, and pick up her mother's medication before the pharmacy closed at 7. She couldn't be late. Not again. Her mom needed that medicine. Kate glanced at the clock, then back at Nathaniel, and finally let her eyes sweep over the 7 stunned executives who were staring at her like they were seeing her for the first time. "My shift is over," she said, surprised by how steady her voice was. "My mother needs her medication." She began pushing the cart toward the door, the sound of the wheels loud in the stunned silence. "Wait." Nathaniel's voice stopped her just as her hand touched the door handle. "You can't just... How do you know about Article 47B? That's very specific knowledge." Kate paused, slowly turned at the door, met those intense blue eyes, and allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't sweet or shy, it was bold, it was freeing. "Good luck with the 200 million, Mr. Maxwell." And with that, Kate Scott walked through the door, letting it close behind her with a firm click, leaving 7 elite MBA executives and a billionaire CEO standing completely still, trying to process the fact that the invisible coffee girl, the one none of them had ever looked at twice, had just solved, in 30 seconds, the problem that had defeated them for 3 whole weeks. Kate had barely closed the boardroom door when she heard the explosion of voices behind her. Shouting, debating, someone pounding the table. She pushed the coffee cart down the luxurious hallway of the 42nd floor, trying to stop her hands from shaking. What had she just done? 5 months of being invisible. 5 months of keeping her head down, serving coffee, earning her $11 an hour without complaint. And in 30 seconds, she had thrown all of it away. She would probably be fired before the end of the week. Kate pushed the cart into the service elevator, pressed the button for the basement where the cafe was, and leaned her head against the cold metal wall. Her heart was still racing. The words she'd spoken echoed in her mind like a scratched record. "Have you tried applying Article 47B from the 2019 tax treaty?" Who did she think she was? The heroine of some cheesy movie? A corporate Cinderella? The elevator moved slowly, those 42 floors feeling more like 200. When the doors finally opened in the basement, Kate pushed the cart out and nearly ran into Diana Torres, her best friend and fellow cafe worker. "Whoa, slow down." Diana grabbed the cart, stopping the collision. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What happened up there?" Kate opened her mouth to answer, but before she could say anything, her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from an unknown number. "Need to speak with you? Cafe, 5 minutes, N. Maxwell." Kate showed the screen to Diana, who widened her eyes. "N. Maxwell? The billionaire CEO N. Maxwell?" Diana practically shouted. "The richest man in Seattle just messaged you." "Kate, what on earth did you do up there?" "I kind of solved a $200 million problem that 7 executives couldn't fix in 3 weeks," Kate murmured, still not quite believing the words herself. Diana was silent for a full 3 seconds. Then she burst into laughter so loud it echoed down the basement hallway. "Of course you did. And I'm secretly the Queen of England." "Kate, seriously, what really happened?" "I'm serious," Kate insisted. "They were using the wrong tax treaty and I just opened my mouth and said something." Diana's expression shifted from amused to genuinely shocked. "You did what?" "Kate, you know we're not paid to speak up, right? We're paid to be invisible and bring the coffee." "I know. Believe me, I know." Kate ran her hands down her face. "But that idiot David spilled hot coffee on me and didn't even say sorry, and I lost it." "So you decided to embarrass 7 MBA executives in front of the billionaire CEO?" Diana shook her head but smiled. Girl, you're my hero, but also completely out of your mind. The main elevator chimed. The doors opened. Nathaniel Maxwell stepped out. In the basement, in the employee cafeteria. The billionaire CEO of Maxwell Industries, wearing a suit that cost more than Kate's car, stood there, looking around like he had just landed on another planet. Diana gave Kate a gentle push. Good luck, she whispered, then disappeared into the cafeteria kitchen with impressive speed. Traitor. Nathaniel walked over to Kate, his hands in his pockets, his expression very different from the one he'd worn in the boardroom. Now there was curiosity, and something else Kate couldn't quite read. Mr. Maxwell, Kate began, trying to sound professional. I need to apologize for saving my company $200 million? Nathaniel cut in, raising one eyebrow. Please don't apologize for that. Kate blinked, confused. I checked, Nathaniel continued. Twice, 3 times actually. You were completely right. Article 47B applies perfectly to our case. 3 weeks, 7 people, millions spent on consultants, and the answer was right in front of us the whole time. He paused, studying her face. How did you know? Kate took a deep breath. No point in lying now. I have a degree in economics from Washington State University, with honors. International trade was my specialty. Article 47B was the topic of my senior thesis. Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, taking it all in. You have a degree in economics, he repeated slowly, with honors, and you're working here, serving coffee for $11 an hour. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, heavy with meaning, but not the kind Kate expected. It wasn't judgment. It was genuine confusion. Life happens, Kate said simply, folding her arms. My mom got sick during my last year of college. The treatment drained everything we had and more. When I graduated, I was almost $100,000 in debt. I needed money fast, not unpaid internships or entry-level jobs that barely pay anything. The cafe here pays $11 an hour, offers health insurance, and it's close to the hospital where my mom gets her treatment. She lifted her chin, defiant. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Most of them anyway. Nathaniel nodded slowly, and Kate could almost see the gears turning behind those sharp blue eyes. How much do you make a week? $400. Sometimes less, depending on my hours. And what if I offered you $5,000 a week? Kate was sure she'd heard him wrong. Sorry, what? $5,000 a week, Nathaniel repeated, as casually as if he were offering her a coffee. Not a life-changing sum of money. Temporary consulting. You help me wrap up this merger, make sure there are no more obvious mistakes that 7 expensive people missed. 2, maybe 3 weeks of work. Kate did the math in her head. $5,000 a week, 3 weeks, $15,000. That would pay for her mom's medication for 6 months, cover the past due rent, maybe even leave enough to buy clothes without coffee stains. But then reality hit her like a bucket of cold water. They're going to hate me, she said, her voice more vulnerable than she meant it to be. Richard, Jennifer, Thomas, all of them. I'll walk into that room tomorrow and they'll tear me apart. They'll make my life miserable. Probably, Nathaniel agreed with brutal honesty. Richard, especially, has an ego the size of Seattle. Being corrected by someone he sees as beneath him is going to sting. Then why would I do this? Because you need the money. Because you're good. Because 3 weeks of hell are worth $15,000. Nathaniel shrugged. And because, if we're being honest, part of you wants to prove you're better than all of them combined. Kate hated that he was right. I don't take charity, she said firmly. It's not charity. You saved my company from losing $200 million because my elite team apparently doesn't know how to use Google. Despite everything, Kate laughed. A short laugh, a little nervous, but real. $5,000 a week, she repeated, still testing the words. And if it takes longer, we renegotiate. Kate looked down at her coffee-stained uniform. She looked at the basement cafeteria where she had spent 5 months being invisible. Then she looked at Nathaniel Maxwell, a billionaire CEO who for some reason was betting on her. I have one condition, Kate said, surprising even herself. I'm listening. No pity. No special treatment because you feel sorry for the poor girl with the sick mother. If I fail, if I don't deliver, you fire me without hesitation. I don't want mercy. I want respect. Nathaniel held out his hand. Deal. Kate shook his hand. It was warm, the grip strong. A handshake that sealed an agreement that would change everything. First meeting is tomorrow, Nathaniel said, 9 a.m. with international investors. Wear something appropriate. He turned to leave, but paused. Kate? Yes? Welcome to Maxwell Industries, for real this time. Nathaniel stepped into the elevator and disappeared. Kate stood there processing. Diana came rushing out of the kitchen. Well, what happened? Were you fired? Promoted? Did he propose to you? He offered me $5,000 a week to be a temporary consultant. Diana's jaw dropped. And you said? I said yes. Oh my gosh, Diana squealed, grabbing Kate's arms. You're rich, I'm completely terrified, Kate cut in. Because tomorrow morning, I'll walk into that room with 7 people who hate me and will do everything they can to tear me apart. Diana held Kate's face with both hands. Then you walk in there and show them what you're made of, Kate Scott. Show them the coffee girl is smarter than all of them put together. Kate nodded, trying to believe in herself. But somewhere on that same floor, hidden in his luxurious office, Richard Stern was already planning exactly how to destroy Kate's career before it even began. The next morning, Kate stood in front of the open wardrobe in the tiny apartment she shared with her mom, staring at her clothing options like she was choosing armor. Because honestly, she was. Appropriate, she muttered, mimicking Nathaniel's voice. Wear something appropriate. Sure, because I have so many appropriate options in my senior financial consultant wardrobe. Her mother, Helen Scott, appeared in the doorway holding a cup of tea, her gray hair still messy from sleep. Honey, you're talking to yourself again. That's not a good sign. Mom, I have 2 pairs of work pants. 2. One has a tear in the knee and the other so faded it looks like it survived World War II. Helen took a sip of her tea, hiding a smile. And you're just now noticing this? After accepting a job that pays more in 1 week than you usually make in 3 months? Kate turned and pointed a hanger at her mother like it was a weapon. You're not helping. I'm not here to help. I'm here to enjoy the show. Helen sat on the bed, clearly entertained. Go on. What else do you have in there? Kate turned back to her sad little wardrobe. There's that white blouse I wear for... No, wait. I stained it with tomato sauce last week. There's the beige blouse that... No, it has a hole in the sleeve. I've got... The cafe uniform? Helen suggested, raising an eyebrow. Mom. I'm being practical. At least it's clean. Kate let her head fall forward in defeat. I'm gonna look like a clown next to those people. They wear suits that cost more than 6 months of our rent. And I'll show up looking like I got dressed in the dark using clothes borrowed from a scarecrow. Helen set her cup aside and stood, walking over to her daughter. She cupped Kate's face in both hands. Kate Elizabeth Scott, yesterday you solved a $200 million problem in 30 seconds. You could walk into that room wearing a potato sack and still be the smartest person there. Kate smiled despite everything. A potato sack would actually be more stylish than what I've got right now. Then get creative. Wear the least wrecked black pants, the white blouse without any visible stains, and pull that beautiful hair into a nice bun. Confidence, my dear, is the best accessory you've got. 45 minutes later, Kate was on the bus headed to Maxwell Industries, wearing exactly what her mother had suggested, plus a black blazer Diana had somehow found in the lost and found bin at the cafe. It didn't match perfectly, and the sleeves were a little too long, but it worked. Sort of. Kate looked at her reflection in the bus window. She looked like a kid wearing her parents' clothes for a school play. Perfect. The bus stopped in front of the towering Maxwell Industries building. Kate stepped off, looked up at the 42 floors of glass and steel, and took a deep breath. You've got this, she whispered to herself. You're smart. You're capable. You're not going to throw up from nerves. At least she hoped that last part was true. The lobby was as busy as ever. Kate passed through the metal detector, showed the temporary badge Nathaniel had arranged for her the night before, and got into the elevator. This time, it wasn't the grimy service elevator in the basement. It was the main executive elevator, full of mirrors and smelling like expensive cleaning products. Kate pressed the button for the 42nd floor and watched the numbers rise. Her stomach, on the other hand, dropped. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a flawless blonde receptionist who gave her a once-over with an expression that clearly said, "You're lost, sweetheart." "I'm Kate Scott," she said, trying to sound confident. "I'm here for the 9 o'clock meeting." The receptionist checked something on the computer, her perfectly arched eyebrows lifting in surprise. "Oh, you're the consultant." The way she said consultant made it clear she didn't believe it for a second. "Yes, that's me, the consultant." Kate forced a smile. "Where's the meeting?" "Main conference room, last door on the left." The receptionist paused. "They started about 10 minutes ago." Of course they did. Kate walked down the hallway, each step echoing on the marble floor. She could hear voices through the frosted glass door of the conference room. Male voices, confident voices. Voices that clearly belonged to people who knew exactly what they were doing. Kate put her hand on the door handle. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Worst case scenario, you get fired and go back to the cafe. Best case, well, you'll find out what that looks like once you get in there." She opened the door. 12 pairs of eyes turned to her at once. Nathaniel was seated at the head of the table, flanked by 4 men in suits Kate didn't recognize, probably the international investors. On the other side were the 7 executives she knew all too well from serving them coffee. Richard Stern was exactly where she expected him, wearing an expression of such obvious disdain it practically screamed, "What is she doing here?" "Ah, our consultant has arrived," Nathaniel said, his voice neutral but not unfriendly. "Kate, please, have a seat." The only empty chair was, of course, right next to Richard Stern. Naturally. Kate walked over, feeling every single eye on her, judging everything. The mismatched outfit, the borrowed blazer with sleeves too long, the hair she'd tried to put up neatly but was already starting to fall loose. She sat down. The chair was soft, expensive leather and made a strange noise that echoed in the silent room. "Sorry I'm late," Kate said, placing her worn-out bag at her feet. "Not a problem," said one of the investors, a man with a thick German accent. Nathaniel was just explaining the tax clause solution. Very impressive, I must say. Richard cleared his throat loudly. "Yes, we were fortunate to catch Article 47B when we did." Kate felt her ears burn. We? Actually," Nathaniel said calmly, "Kate is the one who caught it on her own, in about 30 seconds. The silence that followed was glorious. Richard turned red. Jennifer avoided looking at Kate. Thomas suddenly found his shoes fascinating. One of the investors, an older man with white hair and round glasses, leaned forward, studying Kate with renewed interest. "Impressive. And what's your background, young lady?" "Economics, Washington State University," Kate replied. "International trade, specifically." "And where were you working before Maxwell Industries?" Kate hesitated. This was where things usually fell apart. "I was serving coffee in the basement of this building." You could hear a pin drop. The investors glanced at each other. Richard could barely hide his smirk. Jennifer and Thomas looked deeply uncomfortable. But then the white-haired investor did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a mocking laugh, a warm, genuine one. "Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic." He tapped the table with excitement. "Did you hear that, Klaus? This young woman was serving coffee, and yet she was the only person on this entire floor who could solve a problem that all of us, with our expensive degrees and years of experience, couldn't figure out." Klaus, the German investor, was smiling too. "This reminds me of something my grandfather used to say. He always believed that the best solutions come from people who aren't trapped in traditional ways of thinking." Richard wasn't amused. "With all due respect, gentlemen, solving a one-off issue doesn't qualify someone to advise on a merger of $200 million? Kate interrupted, surprising even herself. "You're right, but considering I solved the problem that nearly cost that $200 million, I'd say I'm at least somewhat qualified." She gave Richard a sweet smile. More than some, apparently. Jennifer let out a cough that sounded suspiciously like a stifled laugh. The white-haired investor clapped his hands. "I like her. She's got a backbone. Nathaniel, you made a good hire." Nathaniel hid a smile behind his coffee cup. "I tend to agree." Richard opened his mouth to argue, but Nathaniel cut him off. "Now, if everyone's ready, let's go over the third quarter financial projections. Kate, I prepared a copy of the documents for you." He slid a thick folder across the table. Kate picked it up and opened it, her trained eyes scanning numbers, charts, tables, and then she saw it. Another mistake. Not as obvious as the first, but clear as day to someone who knew where to look. A revenue projection was using the euro to dollar exchange rate from 6 months ago. The recent drop changed the numbers completely. Kate bit her lip. Should she speak up? On her first day? After already humiliating Richard once? She glanced at Nathaniel, who was watching her closely, as if he was waiting for this exact moment. Then Kate realized this was a test. Nathaniel wanted to see if she had the courage to point out mistakes under pressure. She took a breath and raised her hand. Here we go again. Yes, Kate? Nathaniel said, acknowledging her. All eyes turned to her again. Kate could practically feel Richard fuming beside her. I hate to be that person, Kate began, and she wasn't lying, but there's a small issue with the revenue projection on page 17. Richard grabbed his own copy, flipping pages frantically. Impossible. I personally reviewed those numbers 3 times. Well, maybe on the 4th you would have caught it, Kate said with a smile that was just a little too sweet. The euro-dollar exchange rate you used is from 6 months ago. The euro has dropped significantly in recent weeks. Using the current rate, the revenue projection is inflated by about, she did a quick mental calculation, 12%. The silence in the room was so heavy, Kate could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Klaus, the German investor, pulled out his laptop and started typing rapidly. After a few seconds, he looked up, his expression serious. She's correct. The current rate is 1.18, not 1.33 like it shows in the documents. The white-haired investor looked over his glasses at Richard. That's a fairly significant error, Mr. Stern. Richard was turning red, from the ears all the way up to his forehead. It must have been a typo. Our team will correct it immediately. A typo? Kate couldn't stop herself. Richard, with all due respect, that's not a typo. That's using outdated data. A typo would be switching a number. This is failing to verify your information before presenting it to international investors. Jennifer bit her lip, clearly trying not to laugh. Thomas stared at the table like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. Nathaniel, meanwhile, was sipping his coffee with a perfectly neutral expression, but Kate was sure she saw a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. Kate's right, Nathaniel said calmly. Let's make sure we use the correct numbers moving forward. Richard, please make sure all projections are updated before the next meeting. The way he said please made it clear that it wasn't a suggestion. Richard nodded stiffly, his jaw so tight, Kate wondered if he might crack a tooth. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of numbers, graphs, and technical discussions about corporate structure. Kate spoke when needed, stayed quiet when appropriate, and gradually felt the tension in her shoulders ease. She was doing it. Actually doing it. When the meeting finally ended 3 hours later, the investors stood up, shaking hands around the table. The white-haired investor stopped beside Kate. Young lady, it was a pleasure meeting you. You have a bright future ahead of you, I can guarantee that. Thank you, sir, Kate said, genuinely touched. And one piece of advice? He leaned in, lowering his voice. Don't let the Richards of the world dim your light. The corporate world needs more people like you and fewer who hide behind titles. Kate smiled. I'll remember that. Once the investors left, followed by the executives with Richard practically rushing out of the room, only Nathaniel and Kate remained. You did that on purpose, Kate said. It wasn't a question. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow as he placed documents back into a folder. Did what? Put the mistake in the documents, to see if I'd have the nerve to call it out. Interesting theory. Nathaniel closed the folder. But no, the mistake was real. Richard actually used outdated data. Kate blinked. Really? Really? Nathaniel stood. Which makes me think I hired you just in time, before mistakes like that cost us even more. He checked his watch. It's nearly noon. Have you had lunch? Kate glanced at her bag, where a squished peanut butter sandwich waited. I brought something. I didn't ask if you brought food. I asked if you've eaten. Nathaniel grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. Come on, I know a good place 2 blocks from here. Kate hesitated. Is that appropriate? I mean, you're the CEO, and I'm my consultant, and we need to discuss company strategy. Nathaniel was already walking toward the door. Come on, before Richard starts a rumor that we're having some torrid affair. Kate laughed but followed him. She didn't realize the irony in that last sentence until much later. The restaurant was quiet but clearly expensive. the kind where waiters wore ties and people spoke in hushed tones. Kate felt completely out of place, but Nathaniel ordered for both of them with the ease of someone who had been coming there for years. "So," Nathaniel said once the waiter brought water, "tell me about yourself. Besides the obvious talent with numbers and that knack for humbling my CFO." Kate nearly spit out her water. "I wouldn't call it a knack, more like an accidental consequence of being right." Nathaniel leaned back, studying her. "Economics at a state university, with honors. Why didn't you go into the field after graduation?" Kate fidgeted with the napkin in her lap. "Life had other plans. I needed money quickly, something stable with health insurance. The cafe offered all that. But you knew you weren't using your full potential." "Every single day." Kate met his eyes. "But sometimes survival comes before potential." Nathaniel nodded slowly, like he was truly taking it in. "And your mother? How is she now?" "Better, much better, actually. The doctors are optimistic." Kate smiled. "And thanks to your consultant salary, I can finally afford her meds without choosing between prescriptions and rent." "Well, that's a relief. I wouldn't want to think my consultant is working under threat of eviction." Kate laughed genuinely for the first time since sitting down. "What about you? How does someone become a billionaire CEO at 35? Inherited the company at 28 and managed not to destroy it in the first 6 months," Nathaniel said with a dry humor that surprised Kate. "Though I was tempted a few times." "Tempted to destroy a billion-dollar company?" "Tempted to drop everything and become a surfer in Hawaii." Kate's eyes widened. "You're joking." "Completely serious. There's something very appealing about a life where your biggest problem is which board to use." Nathaniel took a sip of water. "But responsibility is a funny thing. The more you have, the harder it is to walk away." "So you're stuck." "I prefer to think of it as permanently committed." He smiled, but there was a trace of sadness Kate recognized. "Loneliness, the kind that comes from having everything except genuine connection." "When was the last time you really laughed?" Kate asked suddenly. Nathaniel blinked, surprised by the question. "Define really." "You know, a laugh from deep in your belly. That makes your cheeks hurt. That makes you forget for a second that you're a billionaire CEO carrying the weight of the world." Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment. "Yesterday," he said finally, "when you said, 'Good luck with the 200 million,' and walked out of the room like you just dropped the mic at a rap concert." Kate laughed so loudly that several people in the restaurant turned to look. "Sorry, but the image of you comparing my dramatic exit to a rap concert is hilarious." "I have my moments," Nathaniel said, now smiling for real. "Rare, but they exist." Lunch continued with surprisingly easy conversation. Kate discovered that behind the serious CEO was someone with a dry sense of humor and sharp observations about everything, from corporate politics to why Seattle pigeons were unusually aggressive. When they finally left the restaurant 2 hours later, Kate realized something strange. She had enjoyed herself. Truly enjoyed herself. "Thanks for lunch," she said as they walked back to the building. "It was work," Nathaniel replied, but he was still smiling. "Of course, very important work." They entered the lobby together, still talking and laughing about something Nathaniel had said, about how Richard probably had a voodoo doll of Kate in his office. Neither of them noticed Richard Stern watching from the other side of the lobby. Eyes narrowed, phone already in hand, texting Jennifer. They're together, had lunch alone, laughing like old friends. This confirms everything. And just like that, without Kate or Nathaniel realizing, the seed of gossip was planted. The next morning, Kate knew something was off the moment she stepped into the executive elevator. 2 women from the marketing department stopped talking abruptly when they saw her. One looked her up and down with an expression somewhere between curiosity and judgment. The other simply turned away. Kate pressed the button for the 42nd floor, feeling a strange chill in her stomach. "Good morning," she said, trying to ease the silence. The 2 women mumbled something unclear and exited on the 18th floor, clearly before their actual stop. Kate could hear them whispering the second the doors closed. Strange. When she got to her floor, the blonde receptionist, who had treated her with professional indifference the day before, now looked at her with something worse. Pity mixed with disdain. "Good morning, Kate," she said in an overly sweet tone. Mr. Maxwell asked that you go straight to the conference room when you arrived. The way she said, Mr. Maxwell, made Kate want to shower. Thank you, Kate mumbled, heading toward the room. She passed a group of junior executives in the hallway. The conversations stopped. Their eyes followed her. A woman in a red suit whispered something to the colleague beside her, who let out a quiet chuckle. Kate felt her cheeks flush. What was going on? When she entered the conference room, she found Jennifer, Thomas, and 3 other executives she vaguely recognized. All stopped talking when they saw her. Good morning, Kate said, placing her bag on the chair. Good morning, Kate, Jennifer replied, but couldn't meet her eyes. Thomas just gave a quick nod and focused on his laptop again. Kate sat down, opening her folder of documents, but she could feel the stares. She could hear the whispers. Not quite whispers. Had lunch alone yesterday. Suddenly she's a consultant. Obvious how she got the position. Kate froze. Oh no, oh no, no, no. The door opened and Nathaniel walked in, followed by Richard, wearing an expression that could only be described as smug satisfaction. Good morning, everyone, Nathaniel said, taking his seat at the head of the table. Let's start reviewing the final contract drafts for... Nathaniel, Richard interrupted, using the CEO's first name with a level of casualness that made Kate's brow furrow. Before we begin, we need to discuss the matter of appearances. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. Appearances? Well, Richard leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the moment. There have been some comments about inappropriate relationships within the team, and as CFO, I feel it's my responsibility to bring it up before it affects our credibility with investors. The silence in the room was stifling. Kate felt her blood go cold. He wasn't doing this. He wasn't actually doing this. Richard, Nathaniel said, his voice dangerously low, if you have something to say, I suggest you say it plainly. Very well. Richard looked directly at Kate. People are talking about your relationship with Kate, yesterday's lunch, the way you laughed together, the sudden jump from cafe worker to consultant. You do understand how it looks, right? Kate felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Nathaniel didn't move. When he spoke, his voice was so cold, Kate felt the air in the room shift. And who exactly is making these comments? Richard shrugged. It's hallway talk. Several people. I just thought you should know her hiring has raised questions. Kate couldn't stay quiet any longer. She stood up so abruptly that her chair scraped across the floor. I knew this would happen. Her voice came out louder than she intended. I knew exactly how you would all react. Every eye in the room turned to her. Kate, Nathaniel began, but she was already on fire. No. Kate pointed at Richard. You started this, didn't you? Because I had the nerve to be right when you were wrong. Twice, in front of investors. So now, instead of admitting that just maybe I'm actually good at what I do, you spread the story that the only reason I got this job is... She couldn't even finish the sentence. Richard had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but he didn't deny it. Kate looked around the room. Jennifer avoided her gaze. Thomas stared at his hands. The other executives looked uncomfortable but not surprised. Amazing, Kate said, her voice cracking a little. Absolutely amazing. I solve a problem none of you could fix in 3 weeks. I catch mistakes that could have cost millions, but of course the only explanation is that I'm sleeping with the boss. She grabbed her bag. You know what? You can keep your job, your gossip, and your collective mediocrity. I don't need this. Kate left the room before anyone could say a word, before the tears of anger and humiliation burning in her eyes could fall. She headed straight for the elevator, jabbing the basement button repeatedly, as if that would make it arrive faster. When the doors finally opened in the basement, Kate nearly ran to the cafeteria. Diana was wiping tables and looked up when she saw her. Kate, are you okay? Are you crying? I'm not crying, Kate said, furiously wiping her eyes. I'm just leaking. From the eyes. Allergies. Allergic to what? Corporate idiots? That pulled a wet laugh from Kate. Diana guided her to one of the back tables, away from curious eyes, and sat down beside her. Tell me what happened. And Kate told her. Everything. The whispers, the stares, Richard's veiled accusation, the public humiliation. They think I'm having an affair with Nathaniel, Kate finished, her voice small. No matter what I do, no matter how good I am, I'll always be the coffee girl who slept with the boss to get ahead. Diana took her hand. You know that's not true. but they believe it, and that's what matters, right? Kate shook her head. I should have seen this coming. I should have known they'd never accept me, that they'd always find a way to diminish what I've done. So what are you going to do? Kate looked around the cafeteria, her old territory, her safe place. A part of her wanted to stay in that simple world where no one expected anything beyond hot coffee and quiet service. I don't know, she admitted. Honestly, I have no idea. She was about to say more when they heard fast footsteps. Nathaniel appeared at the entrance of the cafeteria, eyes scanning the room until they found her. He walked straight to their table, ignoring the stunned looks from the staff, who had never seen the CEO in the basement. Kate, he said, his voice steady. I need you to come back upstairs. What for? More public humiliation? No, so everyone can see you being officially promoted. Nathaniel crossed his arms. I just called a general meeting, every employee on the 42nd floor. I'm going to publicly present your results, your impact on the company, and announce your new title as Senior Financial Consultant with full salary and benefits. Kate blinked. You're going to do what? Make it impossible for anyone to question your competence or how you got the job. His eyes burned with resolve. And if Richard dares to say a word, I'll remind everyone how many of his mistakes you've already fixed. Diana let out a quiet, wow. Kate slowly stood up. Nathaniel, you don't have to do this. I know I don't have to. I want to, because you deserve respect, and I'm going to make sure you get it. He held out his hand. So what do you say? Want to go upstairs and show them who you really are? Kate looked at his outstretched hand, then at Diana, who nodded in encouragement. She took a deep breath and reached for Nathaniel's hand. Let's end this once and for all. When Kate and Nathaniel stepped off the elevator on the 42nd floor, the hallway was packed. Employees from every department had gathered, whispering among themselves, clearly trying to figure out why the CEO had called an emergency meeting. The whispers grew louder the moment they saw Kate standing beside Nathaniel. Ignore it, Nathaniel whispered. Eyes forward. Kate kept her chin up, even though her heart was pounding like a marching band drum. The main conference room was packed. At least 60 people squeezed in, standing along the walls, sitting in extra chairs. Kate recognized faces from several departments, and they were all looking at her with barely hidden curiosity. Nathaniel walked straight to the front of the room, with Kate following behind him. He didn't ask for silence. He simply stood there, and the room gradually quieted. Thank you for coming on short notice, Nathaniel began, his voice cutting through the air. I called this meeting to clear up a few misunderstandings that seem to have been circulating around the floor in the last 24 hours. People exchanged uncomfortable glances. 3 weeks ago, this company was about to lose $200 million due to a misinterpretation of tax law that no one, and I mean no one, in this room managed to catch. Nathaniel paused. Kate Scott identified it and fixed it in 30 seconds. More whispers. 2 days ago, during a meeting with international investors, Kate caught another mistake. A revenue projection based on an outdated exchange rate, which would have inflated our expectations by 12%. If left uncorrected, that would have damaged our credibility with investors. Nathaniel walked slowly across the front of the room. In the last 3 days, Kate has reviewed contracts, found legal inconsistencies, and saved this company an additional $47 million in potential penalties and liabilities. The room was now completely silent. 47 million, Nathaniel repeated, letting the number linger. In 3 days. He turned and looked directly at Richard, who was standing in the back of the room with his arms crossed. So when I hear rumors that Kate earned her position for any reason other than exceptional skill and sharp intelligence, I am frankly offended. Richard turned red, but said nothing. Which is why, Nathaniel continued, I am officially announcing that Kate Scott is now Senior Financial Consultant at Maxwell Industries, with full salary, benefits, and all the responsibilities the role includes. A few people began clapping, hesitantly. Most just stared, still processing. Richard couldn't help himself. Nathaniel, with all due respect, 3 days of work doesn't qualify someone for. For what, Richard? Nathaniel interrupted, his voice dangerously calm. To be better than you? To catch the mistakes you made? To save the money you would have lost? The room was so quiet, Kate could hear herself breathe. If you have concerns about Kate's qualifications, I suggest you base them on facts, not hallway gossip. Richard opened his mouth, closed it again, and turned purple with silent frustration. And then Kate did something that surprised even herself. She stepped forward. "May I speak?" Nathaniel motioned for her to go ahead, clearly curious. Kate looked around the room, at all those faces that had judged her, whispered about her, doubted her. "Nathaniel, I truly appreciate your support. I do, but he has a point." Surprised murmurs. 3 days don't prove anything in the long run. Maybe I got lucky. Maybe it was coincidence. She paused. Respect isn't something you declare. It's something you earn. Nathaniel frowned slightly but didn't stop her. "So I'd like to propose something." Kate looked straight at Richard. "Give me a project. The hardest one you've got. Something no one's been able to solve. If I fail, I'll leave. No drama, no complaints. But if I succeed..." She let the sentence hang, but the message was clear. If she succeeded, they'd have to swallow their pride and accept that she belonged there. Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. She could see the calculation in his eyes. Then slowly he smiled. "The Titanic project." Jennifer let out a small gasp. Thomas went pale. Even Richard looked surprised. "Nathaniel," Jennifer began. "That's..." "Perfect," Nathaniel finished. "Exactly what Kate asked for, our toughest project." Kate glanced around, seeing the stunned expressions. "What is the Titanic project?" she asked. Thomas answered, his voice hesitant. "It's a complete restructuring of the operations, logistics, and tech support departments. 10 teams have tried over the last 2 years. All failed. Why? Because it's impossible to cut costs without laying off at least 100 people, Richard said with barely hidden satisfaction. And Nathaniel refuses to approve mass layoffs. So the challenge is to restructure 3 departments, significantly reduce costs but without firing anyone? Kate asked. Exactly, Nathaniel confirmed. You have 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Kate repeated. Too much time? Nathaniel teased, raising an eyebrow. Kate felt a smile forming. Perfect. Then it settled. Nathaniel looked around the room. Kate has 2 weeks to present a solution for the Titanic project. And when she succeeds, not if but when, I expect everyone here to have the decency to recognize that she deserves to be part of this team. He paused, letting the words sink in. Meeting adjourned. People began to leave, still whispering, but now the tone had changed. It wasn't malicious gossip anymore. It was genuine curiosity about whether Kate could actually pull it off. Richard walked past her on his way out, stopping just long enough to whisper, 2 weeks. Can't wait to watch you fail. Kate gave him a sweet smile. Get ready to be disappointed, Richard. When the room finally emptied, leaving just Kate and Nathaniel, she turned to him. Are you out of your mind? 10 teams failed. 11, if you count the one that didn't even make a proposal, Nathaniel said, gathering papers from the table. But none of them had you. Is that confidence or insanity? Maybe both. He handed her a thick folder. All the data from the last 2 years. Failed proposals, cost analyses, departmental structures, everything you need is in here. Kate took the folder, feeling its weight, both literally and figuratively. No pressure, right? A lot of pressure, actually. Nathaniel smiled. But something tells me you do your best work under pressure. Kate looked at the folder, then back at Nathaniel. Why are you doing this? Betting on me like this? Nathaniel's face turned serious. Because in 3 days you've proven more valuable than people who've been here for years. And because I believe the best solutions sometimes come from people who aren't stuck thinking the old way. He walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Kate, you'll need an office? You can't do this from the cafe. I have an office? You do now. Last door on the right, your assistant starts tomorrow. My what? But Nathaniel was already gone, leaving Kate alone with a folder that could make or break her career, an impossible project, and apparently an assistant. She looked at the thick folder in her hands. Well, she murmured to herself, at least it won't be boring. In the days that followed, Kate practically moved into her new office. The room was small but functional, with a window offering a partial view of Seattle and a desk that didn't squeak when she leaned on it. A luxury compared to the cafe tables. The Titanic project folder was spread everywhere. Organizational charts covered an entire wall. Colorful sticky notes lined the glass window, forming a chaotic rainbow of ideas and connections. Kate was in her 16th hour of work that day when she heard a knock at the door. "Come in," she said, without looking up from the spreadsheets. "You do realize it's almost 10 at night, right?" Kate looked up. Nathaniel stood at the door, still in his suit, but with his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. "Already?" Kate looked at the clock on the wall, surprised. "I could have sworn it was like 7. "It was, 3 hours ago." Nathaniel stepped in, glancing around at the organized chaos. "Have you eaten anything?" Kate looked at the cold cup of coffee on the desk and the crumpled wrapper from a granola bar. "Technically, yes." "A granola bar doesn't count as dinner, Kate." "It does if you eat 2. She pointed to another wrapper under a report. Nathaniel shook his head, but he was smiling. "Come on, let's get real food." "I can't. I'm in the middle of—" Kate gestured vaguely to the piles of paper. "You're in the middle of working yourself into exhaustion." Nathaniel picked up her blazer from the back of the chair and handed it to her. 15 minutes. Chinese food from the place around the corner. Consider it mandatory project supervision. Kate was about to protest, but her stomach growled so loudly that Nathaniel laughed. "Looks like your body voted for me." 20 minutes later, they were sitting on the floor of Kate's office, since the desk was completely covered with documents, eating lo mein straight from the takeout boxes. "So," Nathaniel said, using chopsticks with surprising skill, "how's the Titanic? Have you found the iceberg yet?" "Several icebergs, but also a few escape routes." Kate took another bite of noodles. "The problem is, every previous team treated this like a math puzzle. Cutting X costs requires eliminating Y positions. Straightforward logic. But they were looking at the wrong pieces." Kate pulled one of the charts off the wall. "Look, the operations department has 17 mid-level managers. 17, for a team of 120 people. And that's a lot? It's insane. The ideal ratio would be 10 at most. But no one wants to lay off managers, so they keep creating subcategories and subdivisions that serve no real purpose except to justify the positions." Nathaniel leaned in to get a better look at the chart. "So, you want to fire the 7 extra managers?" "No. I want to reassign them." Kate grabbed another chart. "The tech support department is overwhelmed and outsources work that could be done in-house. If we move those 7 managers into technical roles, many of them have IT backgrounds anyway, we reduce outsourcing costs and improve efficiency." Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully. "That's actually brilliant. Thank you. But it's also obvious once you stop thinking of departments as isolated silos." Kate picked up more food. "The problem with corporate solutions is that people make things way too complicated. They build systems on top of systems on top of systems until no one knows what's going on anymore," said the woman who covered an entire wall in sticky notes. "That's different. That's organized chaos. Is there such a thing?" "You're looking at it." Nathaniel laughed, a genuine sound that made Kate smile too. They kept eating in a comfortable silence for a few minutes. "Can I ask you something?" Nathaniel said finally. "Sure. Why do you stay so late? I mean, I know the deadline's tight, but you've been here since 6 this morning. That's a lot, even by crazy corporate standards." Kate set her food container aside. "Because for the first time in years I'm doing something that matters, something that really uses my brain." She looked around the messy office. "For 5 months I served coffee. Before that, I worked 3 different jobs that basically paid me to be invisible and not question anything. And now you're saving millions and solving impossible puzzles." "Exactly. It's addictive, you know? That feeling that you're making a difference." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "I remember that feeling. In the early years after I took over the company, before it turned into nothing but meetings and corporate politics." "Do you miss it?" "Miss what?" "Actually working. Solving problems instead of just managing people who solve them." Nathaniel was quiet for so long that Kate thought she had crossed a line. "Sorry," she said quickly. "It's none of my business." "No, you're right." Nathaniel leaned back against the wall. "I do miss it. A lot. Sometimes I sit through 8-hour budget meetings and think, is this really what I got up for today? To argue about the color of the new company logo? Then why don't you go back to doing real work?" "Because when you're the CEO, your job is to sit through boring budget meetings and make logo decisions." He smiled without much humor. It's the part no one tells you about when you take over a corporate empire. Kate pulled a fortune cookie from the takeout bag, cracked it open, and handed half to Nathaniel. You know what I think? What? Rules are made to be questioned. If you want to solve problems, then solve problems. Let someone else sit through the logo meetings. Delegate, you mean? Strategic delegation. Kate opened her half of the cookie and read the message. Fortune favors the bold. Pretty generic. Or pretty fitting, considering. Nathaniel opened his. Big changes come from small decisions. Huh? The universe is feeling very philosophical today. They laughed, and Kate realized this was probably the most genuine conversation she'd had with anyone besides her mom and Diana in months. Maybe even years. I should go, Nathaniel said, though he didn't move. Let you get back to your organized chaos. Or, Kate said impulsively, you could stay and help me with the logistics part. I need someone who understands the political impact of moving managers between departments. Is that a cry for help from the woman who solves $200 million problems in 30 seconds? Everyone needs help sometimes, even cafe super geniuses. Cafe super geniuses? It's my new official title. I had it printed on a business card. Nathaniel laughed again, that same genuine laugh that completely changed his face. All right, let's take a look at your organized chaos. They worked together until almost midnight, side by side, Nathaniel offering the corporate perspective Kate needed, while she laid out solutions none of the 10 previous teams had thought of. And somewhere between the organizational charts and the talks about department efficiency, something shifted. It wasn't just work anymore. It was connection. It was partnership. It was the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name yet. 2 weeks later, Kate was standing in front of the Maxwell Industries board of directors, a projector showing her presentation on a 10-foot wide screen. 12 pairs of eyes were watching her. Richard sat with his arms crossed, clearly expecting a spectacular failure. Nathaniel was at the head of the table, his expression neutral but attentive. And that's how, Kate said, moving to the final slide, we were able to reduce operational costs by 32% without a single layoff. Silence. Kate held her breath. Then the chairman of the board, a 70-year-old man named William Foster, began to applaud. Slowly, others joined in. Within seconds, the entire room was standing and clapping, a standing ovation. Kate felt her knees go weak with relief. Outstanding, William said, still applauding. Simply outstanding. You didn't just solve the problem, young lady, you turned it into an opportunity. Thank you, sir. Richard cleared his throat loudly. Everyone looked at him. It's a suitable solution, he said, the words sounding like they physically hurt. It'll work. Coming from Richard, that was practically a love letter. Kate gave him a sweet smile. Thank you, Richard. Coming from you, that's a great compliment. Jennifer laughed openly. Thomas hid a smile behind his hand. Motion approved, William declared. Implementation starts Monday. Kate, congratulations. You've officially done the impossible. When the meeting ended and everyone left, only Nathaniel and Kate remained. You nailed it, he said simply. We nailed it. You helped me with half of that. I brought Chinese food and agreed with your ideas. You did the heavy lifting. Kate packed her laptop into her bag, still processing the fact that she had really pulled it off. So, Nathaniel said, and there was something different in his voice, do you have plans for tonight? Kate looked at him, surprised. It's Friday. My fancy plan involves pajamas and a documentary about penguins. Penguins? They're fascinating, okay? Don't judge me, Nathaniel laughed. How about postponing the penguins for one night? Let me take you to dinner, a real dinner, not Chinese food on the office floor. Kate felt a tightness in her chest. Nathaniel, that sounds like a dinner? Because that's exactly what it is. He put his hands in his pockets, almost nervous. It's not a work meeting. It's not required supervision. It's just dinner. With me, if you'd like. Kate should have said no. She knew that. She had just survived rumors about an inappropriate relationship. A real, romantic dinner would only make things worse. But when she looked at Nathaniel, at the vulnerable hope in his eyes, she found herself saying, yes, I'd really like that. The smile he gave could have lit up all of Seattle. 3 hours later, Kate was in front of the mirror in the tiny apartment bathroom, wearing the only half-decent dress she owned, a simple dark green one she had bought on sale 2 years earlier. You look beautiful, Helen said from the doorway. I'm nervous. That's a good sign. What do you mean? It means you care. Helen gently fixed a strand of her daughter's hair. When was the last time you cared about someone like this? Kate had no answer to that. The restaurant was elegant without being pretentious. Soft music playing in the background, candles on the tables. Nathaniel was already waiting, no tie, more relaxed than Kate had ever seen him. Wow, he said when he saw her. You look... Wow. Kate laughed, very eloquent. Sorry, my brain stopped working for a second. He pulled out her chair. Green is definitely your color. They ordered wine, food, and talked about everything except work. Kate told funny stories from college. Nathaniel shared embarrassing memories from when he took over the company at 28. I called a board meeting thinking I was being a strong leader, he said, laughing at himself. Turns out I called it in the middle of the night because I mixed up the time zones. Half of them showed up in pajamas. You didn't? I did. It was my first week. They forgave me, eventually. Kate was laughing so hard that tears were rolling down her cheeks. Nathaniel watched her with that look that made her stomach flip. Dessert arrived. They shared a slice of chocolate cake, and there was a moment, forks touching, eyes meeting, when the world seemed to stop. Nathaniel leaned in slightly. Kate did too. And then her phone rang. Ignore it, Nathaniel murmured. But something about the ringtone made Kate pause. It was the hospital. She recognized the number. I'm sorry, she said, picking up the phone. Hello? Kate Scott? This is Seattle General. Your mother has been admitted to the emergency room. You need to come immediately. Kate's world collapsed. What? She was fine when I left. What happened? We'll explain when you get here. Please come quickly. Kate stood up so fast she nearly knocked over the chair. I have to go. My mom. The hospital. Nathaniel was already on his feet, throwing money on the table. I'll drive you. They ran to the parking lot, got into his car, and Nathaniel sped through the streets of Seattle while Kate tried not to panic. When they got to the hospital, a doctor met them with a serious expression. Your mother needs surgery. It's urgent. The estimated cost is $80,000. Kate felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. $80,000. She didn't even have 10% of that. Kate spent the whole night at the hospital, scribbling desperate numbers on paper napkins while waiting for news about her mother. $80,000. Even with her new consulting salary, she maybe had $15,000 saved. Insurance would cover part of it, but not all. She needed at least $50,000 in cash. Kate, Nathaniel touched her shoulder gently. He had stayed with her all night. Let me help. No. Kate, I said no, Nathaniel. She didn't even look at him. I'll handle this on my own. The next morning, the surgery was successfully performed thanks to partial insurance coverage, but the bills kept coming. Kate returned to work like a zombie, running on autopilot. Diana found her at lunchtime, sitting on a bench outside the building, staring at a calculator. You look awful, Diana said, sitting beside her. Thanks. You always know just what to say. How many hours of sleep? 3. Maybe 2. Kate tossed the calculator into her bag. No matter how many times I crunch the numbers, the result is the same. I'm screwed. Ask Nathaniel. Absolutely not. Kate, the man clearly cares about you. He stayed at the hospital all night. Exactly why I can't ask him. Kate finally looked at her friend. People are already saying I only got this job because of him. If I ask for money now, that confirms everything. I won't mix things, Diana. I won't. Diana sighed but didn't push further. What Kate didn't know was that at that very moment, on the 42nd floor, Nathaniel's assistant was casually mentioning, "Oh, and Kate requested a 6-month salary advance. I told her it needed your approval first." Nathaniel froze in the middle of signing a document. She asked for what? 6 months in advance. $30,000. Nathaniel dismissed the assistant and picked up the phone. 3 discreet calls later, he knew everything. The surgery, the years of unpaid medical bills, the loans Kate had taken out to cover previous treatments. He stared at the computer screen, at the numbers in the company's account. Then he picked up the phone again. I want to make a personal transfer, he told the bank manager. $100,000, anonymous. 2 days later, Kate was checking her bank balance online when she froze. What? $100,000. Out of nowhere. Source anonymous transfer. But nothing was truly anonymous if you knew where to look. Kate called the bank, traced the source through a reference code, and 15 minutes later was marching toward Nathaniel's office. She didn't knock, just opened the door and walked in. "You had no right," Kate practically shouted. Nathaniel stood behind the desk, clearly expecting that reaction. "Kate, $100,000, Nathaniel? 100,000? Your mother needed surgery, and I was going to handle it myself." Kate slammed her bag on the desk. "I didn't ask for your help. I don't want your charity. It's not charity." "Then what is it? Because it feels a lot like you trying to buy me." Nathaniel turned red. "Buy you? Do you really think I don't know what to think." Kate felt angry tears burn. "You dropped a fortune into my account without asking, without warning. How do you think that makes me feel?" "I thought you'd feel relieved. Your mom needed care. And I was going to take care of it. Don't you trust me to solve my own problems?" "It's not about trust. It's about not wanting to watch you suffer when I can help." "But I didn't ask for your help." Kate was yelling now, months of wounded pride exploding. "I don't want to be one of your charity cases, Nathaniel. I don't want to be the poor woman you rescued." "You're not a case." Nathaniel was yelling too, coming around the desk. "You never were." "Then why did you do it? Why throw money at the problem without even talking to me?" "Because I love you." The words exploded between them like a bomb. Kate stood completely still. Nathaniel too, looking just as shocked as she was for saying it out loud. The silence that followed was deafening. "You? What?" Kate could barely whisper. Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, clearly trying to stay in control. "It's not charity when I love you, Kate. When I wake up thinking about you. When I spend the whole day looking for any excuse to see you. When I stay at the hospital all night just to make sure you're okay." Kate felt the ground disappear under her feet for the second time in 3 days. "You can't." "We can't," she stammered. "Why not?" "Because it's complicated. Because you're my boss. Because people already talk. Because you're scared," Nathaniel said gently. Kate finally let the tears fall. "I don't know how to handle this," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I don't know how to separate gratitude from. She couldn't finish. She couldn't say the word. Kate grabbed her bag and rushed out of the office before Nathaniel could say anything else. She didn't come back the next day, or the one after, or the third. For 3 full days, Kate Scott simply disappeared. On the 3rd day of Kate's absence, Maxwell Industries was in a state of controlled panic. "Did anyone check this currency forecast?" Jennifer asked during the morning meeting, nervously staring at the numbers on the screen. Thomas flipped through papers frantically. "I thought you checked it." "I thought David checked it." David raised his hands. "Nobody told me to check anything." Nathaniel watched the chaos from across the table, a headache forming. 3 days without Kate, and the company was falling apart in slow motion. A critical issue had come up with the European contract, and no one could find a solution. They needed her. But more than that, he needed her. And not just to fix company problems. "Meeting's over," Nathaniel said abruptly, getting up. "Figure it out yourselves. I have something more important to do." He walked out before anyone could protest. Meanwhile, at Seattle General Hospital, Kate was sitting next to her mother's bed, slowly peeling an orange. Helen was recovering well from the surgery, sitting comfortably against the pillows, watching her daughter with that motherly look that sees everything. "Are you going to tell me what happened, or should I guess?" Helen finally asked. "Nothing happened." "Kate, you've been peeling that orange for 20 minutes. It's mush now." Kate looked at her hands and saw her mom was right. The orange was a mess. "I messed everything up," she admitted softly. "With Nathaniel?" Kate looked up surprised. "How did you?" "Sweetheart, I'm your mom. I know when you're in love. The real question is, do you?" "I'm not." Kate started, but the words faded. "Okay, maybe I am. A little, or a lot. I don't know, Mom. It's all so confusing." Helen took her daughter's hand, orange mush and all. "What exactly is confusing?" "He gave me $100,000. To save my life. What a monster." "Mom, I'm serious. He gave you money for a medical emergency, and you're acting like he committed a crime. He didn't ask. He just deposited it." "And would you have accepted it if he had asked?" Kate said nothing. "Exactly," Helen said gently. "Sweetheart, your pride is beautiful. It's one of your best traits. But sometimes pride is just fear in disguise. Fear of what? of not being enough, of owing someone, of depending on someone. Helen squeezed her hand. But real love doesn't keep score. It doesn't count who owes who. It just gives. But we're from completely different worlds, Kate said, her voice breaking. He's a billionaire CEO. I was serving coffee a month ago. Love doesn't see worlds, Kate. It sees people. And the way that man looks at you. Helen smiled. He sees you. Really sees you. Kate felt warm tears run down her cheeks. What if I ruin everything? What if it doesn't work? And what if it does? Helen replied. What if it's the best thing that ever happens to both of you? Kate was about to respond when there was a knock at the door. A nurse peeked in, looking surprised. Miss Scott, someone's here to see you. Nathaniel walked in holding a bouquet so large he could barely see over it. White daisies, sunflowers, pink roses, an entire garden in his arms. I didn't know which ones you liked, he said, his voice muffled by the flowers, so I brought them all. Despite everything, Kate laughed. Helen looked between the two of them and smiled. I think I'm going to take a little nap. You two talk. Try not to destroy any more oranges. She closed her eyes, clearly pretending to sleep, but leaving room for them. Nathaniel placed the flowers into an improvised vase, a water pitcher the nurse had quickly brought, and sat down in the chair next to Kate. I'm sorry, he said. Me too. You first. No, you first. You brought flowers. Fair point, Nathaniel took a deep breath. I shouldn't have deposited the money without asking. You're right, it was presumptuous and didn't respect your independence. But Kate, if I could go back in time, I'd do it again, because seeing you suffer when I can help is, he searched for the words, it's impossible. For me, it's impossible. Kate wiped her tears. I was unfair. You were just trying to help, and I lashed out. I was scared. Scared of what? That all of this is too good to be true. That one day I'll wake up and realize I don't deserve any of it. The job, the respect, you. Her voice faltered. Especially you. Nathaniel gently held her face in both hands, making her look into his eyes. Kate Scott, you are the most brilliant, funny, stubborn, and amazing person I've ever met. You solve problems in seconds that others take weeks to figure out. You stand up to arrogant executives without blinking. You care for your mother with such devotion that it leaves me speechless. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You don't just deserve all this. You earned it. Nathaniel, But he wasn't done yet. And about loving you? That has nothing to do with who deserves what. It's about the way you make me laugh. The way you make me think. The way you make me want to be better. It's about the fact that for the first time in years, I wake up looking forward to the day, just because I might see you. Kate's heart was pounding so hard, she was sure he could hear it. I'm really scared, she admitted, of messing this up, of not being enough for your world. Forget my world, he said softly. Let's build our own. And then, right there in that hospital room, with a mother pretending to sleep and a corner full of flowers, Kate finally did what she should have done at the restaurant. She kissed Nathaniel Maxwell. It started as a soft kiss, hesitant, testing. But then it deepened, becoming everything she had been holding back for weeks. Fear turned into courage, gratitude into affection, confusion into absolute certainty. When they finally pulled apart, Kate was smiling through her tears. So, she said, about that interrupted dinner. We'll reschedule as many times as it takes to get through it. Sounds like a plan. Helen coughed loudly without opening her eyes. If you two are done making up, Kate, you've got work waiting. And Nathaniel, thank you for the flowers. They're beautiful. They both laughed, and for the first time in days, Kate felt light again. The next day, Kate returned to work. She was welcomed with a hug from Jennifer, a high five from Thomas, and even a sticky wave from David. But Richard was strangely quiet, watching from a distance with a smile that made Kate's stomach tighten. She didn't know that, at that very moment, he was putting the final touches on his plan. Fake documents ready to accuse her of insider trading. The storm was just beginning. The following morning, Kate walked into the conference room smiling, still feeling the warmth of Nathaniel's kiss. Her happiness lasted exactly 12 seconds. Richard was seated at the head of the table beside 3 board members she had never met in person. Their expressions were serious, grave. Kate Scott, one of them said formally, please have a seat. Kate's smile vanished. What's going on? Richard slid a thick folder across the table. Kate opened it with trembling hands. Financial transaction records, emails, documents with her signature. You're being accused of insider trading, the board member said, using privileged information for personal gain. Kate felt the blood drain from her face. That's ridiculous. I never. The documents speak for themselves, Richard cut in, barely hiding his satisfaction. You had access to confidential information about the merger and used it to make personal investments that earned you $50,000. I don't have $50,000. I barely have $5. Not anymore. You moved the money to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Richard pointed to one of the documents. It's all here. Date, time, amount. Kate stared at the papers, panic rising in her throat. They looked real. Her signature, her name. This is fake, she said, voice shaking. Someone forged these documents. That's a serious accusation, the board member said. Until we complete a full investigation, you are suspended from all duties effective immediately. You can't. We can. And we are. Hand over your badge and leave the building. Kate looked around the room. Jennifer avoided her gaze. Thomas stared at his hands. Only Diana, who had just walked in with coffee, looked at her, eyes wide with horror and sympathy. Where's Nathaniel? Kate asked. In an off-site meeting, Richard said too quickly. He'll be informed. Kate realized it then. Richard had planned everything for the exact moment Nathaniel would be away. But there was nothing she could do. With shaky legs, Kate handed over her badge and walked out. 3 hours later, the story was on every financial news site. Maxwell Industries consultant accused of insider trading. From coffee server to corporate criminal. The real story behind Kate Scott's meteoric rise. Kate shut down her computer, unable to read anymore. Her phone was buzzing nonstop. Reporters were at her apartment door. Her reputation was being torn apart in real time. Nathaniel called 17 times. She didn't answer once. What could she say? That she was innocent, but everything looked like she was guilty? 2 days dragged by like weeks. Kate barely got out of bed. Helen tried to cheer her up. But even her mother looked worried. Then, on the morning of the third day, Nathaniel showed up at her door. "You're not answering my calls," he said bluntly. There was nothing to say. "Well, I have something to say." Nathaniel walked in and placed a folder on the kitchen table. Richard forged the documents. Kate looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "What? I hired the best private investigator in Seattle. It took 2 days, but he found everything." Nathaniel opened the folder. Richard used forgery software to fake your signature. The offshore accounts? They don't exist. The transaction records were completely made up. How did he make it all look so real? Because he's done it before. Nathaniel pulled out more papers. 3 times in the last 5 years, always with talented employees who threatened his position. 2 left quietly, 1 sued but lost because he had no proof. But now you have proof. Now I do. Nathaniel smiled grimly. And the board will see everything today. Dress nicely. You'll want to see his face when I take him down. 4 hours later, Kate was back in that same conference room, but this time the full board was present. 12 people, including William Foster, the chairman. Richard sat nearby, looking far too confident for someone about to be exposed. "Thank you for coming," Nathaniel began. "I called this meeting to correct a terrible injustice." He spent the next 20 minutes presenting every piece of evidence. The forged documents, the forgery software found on Richard's personal computer, the history of 3 past employees he had sabotaged the same way. Color slowly drained from Richard's face. You can't prove," he stammered. "I already did." Nathaniel dropped the final report on the table. "And there's more. You used company funds to pay for the forgery software. Technically, that's embezzlement." Silence filled the room. William Foster stood up slowly. "Richard Stern, you are fired effective immediately, and we will gladly cooperate with authorities in any criminal investigation." Richard turned pale. "You can't do this. I've worked here for 15 years. And use those 15 years to sabotage good people." William turned to Kate. "Miss Scott, on behalf of the entire board, I offer our deepest apologies. Your name will be fully cleared, and a public statement will be released today." Kate nodded, still trying to process everything. Richard was escorted out by security. When the door closed, William turned to Kate again. "One more thing, we need a new CFO, and frankly, after everything you've been through, I can't think of anyone more qualified." Kate blinked. You're offering me the CFO position? Full salary, company shares, and our complete respect. It was everything Kate had dreamed of. CFO of a billion-dollar company, at 27, financial security for life. She looked at Nathaniel, who smiled proudly. Then Kate did something no one in the room expected. I truly appreciate it, she said calmly, but I have to decline. Silence returned, this time from pure shock. Decline? William repeated. Why? Because I've realized something these past few weeks. I don't want to spend the next 20 years in meeting rooms discussing budgets. I want to make a difference in another way. Kate took a deep breath. I applied to Stanford for a master's in international economics, and I was accepted with a full scholarship. Jennifer let out a small squeal. Thomas dropped his pen. Nathaniel didn't move at all, his expression unreadable. I start in 2 months, Kate continued. So, if the CFO offer is still open when I finish my degree in 2 years, I'd love to reconsider. But for now, I need to grow, to learn, to become the best version of myself. William studied her for a long moment, then smiled. You are an extraordinary young woman, Kate Scott. The offer will be waiting when you return. The meeting ended. People left. Kate stayed where she was, waiting for Nathaniel to speak. He finally looked at her. Stanford, he said quietly. Stanford. For 2 years. Yes. Nathaniel nodded slowly. Then, he said, and Kate could see the pain he was trying to hide, I guess we have a lot to talk about. The next 2 months went by too fast and too slow at the same time. Kate spent her days training her replacement, a young analyst named Peter, who had half her confidence and twice her anxiety, and spent every free moment she could with Nathaniel. They were officially dating now, though quietly. Dinners in small restaurants far from downtown, walks in the park on Sundays, movie nights at her apartment while Helen pretended not to be watching from the kitchen. You know my mom literally hasn't blinked in the last 10 minutes, right? Kate whispered one night during a movie. Nathaniel glanced over casually. Helen was standing at the kitchen doorway, holding a cup of tea, eyes fixed on them. Hi, Helen, he waved. Just checking if you need more popcorn, she said a little too quickly before disappearing. Kate buried her face in her hands, laughing. This is so embarrassing. I think it's sweet. Nathaniel pulled her closer. She loves you. She just wants to make sure I'm good enough for you. And are you? Not even close. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be. Talks like that became common. Future plans. Whispered promises. But always with Stanford's shadow hanging over them. 2 years is a long time, Kate said one night, lying on the couch with her head in Nathaniel's lap. It is, but it's not, he said, playing with her hair. I'll visit every month. You'll come home for the holidays. We have video calls. Long-distance relationships are tough. They are, but you're worth every mile. On Kate's last day at Maxwell Industries, she walked in to find the entire floor decorated with balloons and a huge banner that read, Good luck at Stanford, Kate. Surprise! Diana yelled, tossing confetti. Kate's mouth dropped open. At least 50 people were there, even folks from other departments she barely knew. Jennifer came over with a giant chocolate cake. We know you love chocolate, so we made a cake big enough to feed a small army. You're all amazing, Kate said, her voice shaking. Thomas handed her an envelope. From all of us, for books or pizza. Your call. Kate opened it. It was a bookstore gift card worth $500. Signed by practically everyone on the floor. I'm going to cry and ruin my makeup, Kate joked, wiping her eyes. Nathaniel stood on a chair to get everyone's attention. Can I say a few words? The room went quiet. Kate Scott walked into this building 6 months ago, serving coffee for $11 an hour. She leaves having been offered the position of CFO. He looked directly at her. She taught us that titles don't define worth, that intelligence can come from unexpected places. And that sometimes the most capable person in the room is invisible because no one's really looking. People applauded. Kate felt warm tears run down her cheeks. My turn, she said when the room settled. You taught me that earning respect isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, every day. And that family isn't just blood. Sometimes it's a group of people who believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. More applause, more tears. Diana hugged her so tightly, Kate could barely breathe. When the party finally ended and everyone had gone home, only Nathaniel remained. Ready? He asked gently. For Stanford or to say goodbye? Both. Kate looked around the office that had been hers for such a short time, but had meant so much. Let's go. Nathaniel drove her to the airport. The goodbye at the terminal was heartbreaking. 2 months until I see you again, Kate said, clinging to him. 58 days. But who's counting? Nathaniel tried to smile. I love you. I love you more. Impossible. One last kiss. One last hug. And then Kate walked through security, looking back until Nathaniel was out of sight. 6 months flew by in a blur of classes, assignments, and daily video calls. Kate stood out at Stanford, just like everyone knew she would. Nathaniel visited every single month without fail. Weekends in Palo Alto, walks on campus, dinners at student cafes where he was definitely the most well-dressed man in the room. You really stand out here. Kate laughed one night, seeing him in an Armani suit surrounded by students in sweatshirts. Good, that way everyone knows you're taken. Their relationship not only survived the distance, it thrived. And then, graduation day arrived. Kate was chosen as the class speaker. Helen and Diana were in the audience of 2,000 people, and hidden in the back, wearing ridiculous sunglasses in an attempt to be discreet, was Nathaniel. 6 months ago, Kate began her speech. I was serving coffee and invisible. Today I'm here because one sentence changed everything. Have you tried applying Article 47B? 30 seconds of courage that transformed my whole life. The audience was completely silent. Everyone here has their own sentence waiting, that one moment of courage that will change everything. My advice? Don't wait for the perfect permission. Don't wait to feel ready. Just say the sentence. Take the chance. Believe you deserve to be in the room. Thunderous applause. Kate finished, stepped down from the stage, and was walking back to her seat when she heard her name over the microphone. She turned around. Nathaniel Maxwell was on the stage. Sorry to interrupt, he said, smiling nervously. But I also have a sentence that will change everything. Kate froze. Nathaniel stepped off the stage, walked toward her, and in front of 2,000 people, knelt down. The stadium erupted in cheers. Kate Scott, Nathaniel said, pulling a small box from his pocket, you changed my life in ways I didn't even know were possible. You made me laugh. You made me think. You made me want to be better. So here's my sentence. Will you marry me? Kate couldn't even speak. She just nodded frantically, laughing and crying at the same time. I need words, sweetheart. Yes, she shouted. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. The entire stadium stood, applauding. Nathaniel placed the ring, simple, elegant, perfect, and kissed her, while 2,000 strangers celebrated. A year later, they were married in an intimate but elegant ceremony. Helen cried. Diana was a bridesmaid. Even Jennifer, Thomas, and the rest of the Maxwell Industries team showed up. But the most special moment wasn't the wedding. It was 3 months later, at the opening of the Carter Maxwell Foundation. Kate and Nathaniel had transformed the old corporate coffee shop into a training center for workers who wanted to study but couldn't afford to. Scholarships, mentoring, real support, and Kate had hired Diana as director of operations. At the opening ceremony, Kate was serving coffee symbolically, a return to her roots, when a young woman walked up. Excuse me, the girl said shyly. I'm new here, as a server, and I just wanted to ask. How did you get here? From server to all this? Kate smiled, remembering 6 months ago when she had been that girl. I said a sentence that changed everything, she answered gently. A sentence that took 30 seconds of courage. And you can too. Nathaniel appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and together they looked at the training center full of people who were exactly where Kate had once been. Invisible. But not for long. You know what I learned? Kate said, leaning into Nathaniel's embrace. What? That sometimes all it takes is 30 seconds of courage and someone willing to listen. Nathaniel kissed her hair. And a little spilled coffee to kick things off. Kate laughed. That helps too. What did you think of Kate and Nathaniel's story? Let us know in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to catch all our stories. And check out more emotional stories by clicking here on the end screen.